It was a stormy night in the city when Alexander Reed, the ruthless and brilliant CEO of Reed Enterprises, sat alone in his glass-walled penthouse. Lightning flashed across the skyline as he reviewed financial reports, his expression cold and unyielding. The world, he was a legend of success, shung, powerful, and feared. But behind that steel mask was a man haunted by a past he never spoke of, a childhood marked by poverty and pain. Just as the clock struck midnight, a faint knock echoed through the grand hallway. It was strange no one ever visited him without an appointment, especially at that hour. He frowned, setting his papers aside, and walked toward the door. The rain was pouring hard outside, drumming against the glass like desperate fingers. When he opened the door, his heart stopped. Standing there was a little girl, no older than 7, soaked to the bone, shivering violently. Her eyes were wide and red from crying, and her tiny hands clutched a torn piece of paper. "Please, help my mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They hurt her. She's dying." Alexander froze. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice softening despite himself. The girl's lips quivered. I didn't know where else to go. You're the only one she said could help. She said your name. Mr. Reed." He blinked, confusion flashing across his face. "My name?" He knelt down, leveling his eyes with hers. "What's your mother's name?" She sniffled, pulling the paper closer to her chest. Grace Miller." The name hit him like a thunderclap. Grace Miller, the woman who once saved his life when he was a nobody. The kind nurse who had taken care of him years ago when he'd been just a broke teenager working 3 jobs to survive. She was the only person who had ever treated him with kindness when the world had turned its back on him. Without another word, Alexander grabbed his coat and keys. "Come on," he said, scooping the girl into his arms. "We'll find your mother." They drove through the rain, the girl Lily. As she later told him, guiding him through narrow back streets and forgotten corners of the city. Finally, they reached a crumbling apartment building on the outskirts of town. The lights flickered weakly and the stench of dampness filled the air. When they entered the small apartment, Alexander's chest tightened. On a thin mattress by the window lay Grace, pale, weak, and bruised. Her breathing was shallow, her hands trembling as she tried to sit up. "Alex," she rasped when she saw him, her eyes filling with tears. He knelt beside her, voice breaking. "Grace, what happened to you?" Her lips trembled. "I didn't want to bother you. But some men from the factory I tried to stop them from hurting a coworker. They came after me instead." She coughed weakly, blood staining her lips. "I didn't think I'd make it, but I told Lily. If anything happened to me, find you. You were always a good one." Alexander clenched his fists, fury burning through him. "Who did this?" Grace weakly shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I just wanted to know Lily would be safe." Her eyes drifted to her daughter, who stood crying silently by the doorway. That night, Alexander rushed her to the hospital. He called his personal doctors, offered money, anything to save her. But despite every effort, Grace's condition worsened. Before dawn, she opened her eyes one last time and whispered, "Thank you, Alex. Take care of her, please." Then her hand went still. Alexander sat frozen, tears slipping down his face, something he hadn't felt in years. For once, the CEO who had conquered empires felt powerless. Lily sobbed softly in the corner, hugging her knees. Alexander walked over and knelt beside her. "I'm sorry, Lily," he whispered, "but I promise you're not alone anymore." From that day on, his life changed completely. Adopted Lily, giving her the childhood he never had. But he didn't stop there. He launched a new foundation under Grace's name, the Miller Hope Foundation, to help single mothers, children, and victims of abuse. He hunted down the men responsible for Grace's attack, not with vengeance, but with justice, using his influence to ensure they were brought to trial. Years passed. The once cold-hearted CEO became known for his compassion and charity. He attended every one of Lily's school plays, every birthday, every moment that mattered. The little girl who had knocked on his door that stormy night grew up surrounded by love, calling him Dad. One evening, many years later, Lily stood on stage at her university graduation. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the crowd. "When I was 7, I thought my world had ended," she said. "But one man opened his door and gave me hope. He'd lost his friend that night, but he gained a daughter. And he taught me that sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones who build empires. They're the ones who rebuild hearts. In the audience, Alexander wiped his eyes. Grace's picture hung on his office wall, now smiling, eternal. Every time he looked at it, he remembered her words, her kindness. And the night a little girl's knock had changed his life forever. Message: no act of kindness is ever wasted. What you give today might one day return to you in the most unexpected and beautiful way.